Greatest mic check of all time.
Happy Saturday and welcome to the Marketing Madmen. And I'm going to introduce our guests, but first I want to let you know that an Eminem freestyle just broke out in this studio, and we went with Drug Ballad, which is so freaking impressive because I was thinking the usual Lose Yourself or maybe a Stan, but we went Drug Ballad, so that'll give you an idea about what we're about to talk about. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce Brad first because he's the one who dropped the freestyle to start. So we got Brad Burns. Brad, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having us.
Good to have you. And we got Chris Voschel of Mizuno Golf, and we're going to actually talk about golf. As much as I want to do an Eminem show, we're going to have to table that for now, and we're going to talk golf. So most importantly, to start, let me tell a quick story because I don't think I've told this on the show, and you guys will appreciate this. I moved to Atlanta 10 and a half years ago. I started here at 6A The Fan. The owner, David Dickey, was like, "You play golf?" And my natural reaction is, "Of course I do." Never played golf before. So he goes, "Cool, be here on Friday." So here just happened to be Eastlake. Here just happened to be the same month as the Tour Championship. Here just happened to be with the GM of the Atlanta Braves, Frank Wren, at the time. So I played in Eastlake at the Tour, the week before the Tour Championship, with all the stanchions up with the bunch of Braves players, and I'd never played golf before. So my natural reaction, I bought Wilson clubs for $80 at Sports Authority. I was wearing twill khakis and like an ugly polo, and I was so in over my head, it's disgusting.
I'm sure
you shot 72.
So the beauty of the Eastlake, this is where caddies really help. So the caddy said a couple things. First off, I found the youngest person, because this is a big tournament, they had a $500 credit at the store. So I'm like, dress me. Like, I'm a child, I need you to dress me and put me in a position to look acceptable. So I was dressed. Then the caddy said, the caddy just kind of saw me shaking. He's like, "Dude, chill out." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Just get drunk." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Just blame the booze." I was like, that I can do. So there's my first time playing golf. So that is in Atlanta, in Eastlake. Now, luckily, two of the people I played with, Bruce Scala and Andy Kristen, became clients and friends. I didn't embarrass myself that badly. I've since taken revenge on Eastlake, meaning I think I probably shot a 98, but which is much better than a 0.000. So that's my golf story. So that'll give you an idea of what kind of show we're going to have here.
Well, the only thing I would add to that is we need to upgrade you from the Wilsons to Mizunos. I think that'll help out.
The good news is I have Mizuno wedges, and I have played it a long time ago. I'm not shooting a 98 on old Wilson. I think they might have still been made of wood, the woods. All right, so enough with the funny stuff because, look, Mizuno, first of all, let's talk about the pedigree and the history of Mizuno, because I think with most international companies, right, you have to go back and you have to tell a story that probably didn't start in golf, probably didn't start in volleyball. So, Chris, why don't we do the quick version to bring us up to speed to just how big Mizuno is and why this big push into golf was so meaningful and so important?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, Mizuno goes back a long ways. 1906 is when it got founded. Rihachi Mizuno, Japanese guy, about 5'6", was a big baseball player. He and his brother started a sporting goods store in Osaka, Japan, and with that, they wanted to kind of, I'd say, revolutionized the way baseball was tested. And one of the great stories about him was in their baseball store, he actually devised a method to measure the COR of a ball, of dropping it from a certain height, how high could that ball bounce back. And that was kind of the start of, not only are we selling equipment, but we can make and improve equipment from there.
Wow.
So with that was 1906, that was baseball. Mizuno then has come a long way. That was a small store in Osaka, Japan. And now we're international in basically every sport you can imagine.
Yeah.
You watch the Olympics, huge in the Olympics. You'll see the curling team wearing Mizuno Runbirds on their shirts. Swimwear, got some of the most competitive stuff in the world. And obviously we're here because we are on the golf side. And to a golfer, I don't think there's anything better than a Mizuno golf club.
Yeah, and I think my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but that was always the core of it, right? The modernizing and the equipment. It wasn't so much the lifestyle brand that you see with a lot of these streetwear brands and the manufacturers. It was more making things better, and it was the technology and the improvement, which was so ahead of its curve. I mean, I just listened to a podcast about, I don't know, it was Adidas and Puma were brothers in Germany, and they had a falling out, and they went different ways, and one was more this. So it's amazing that all of these things really first started as a problem for a solution for a problem, right? Hey, the equipment's great, the players aren't getting better. How do we tweak the equipment to make these kids better?
That's exactly right, and that's what's so cool about Mizuno. And we are very much an engineering company. You look at the history of us, what we've done with revolutionizing the COR of a baseball, creating gliders and stuff. Competitive gliders was going back in the day, stuff we did. But then implementing new processes on the manufacturing side across all different sports is something something that we really, hang our hat on.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to that, especially on golf. Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you. So talk a little bit about the evolution of golf. Obviously, we can do like everybody and just start with Tiger and go from there because that's pretty much the story of modern golf. But talk more about the past 10 years. Talk about the rise of kind of the casual golfer. Talk about COVID, getting people out and playing. Talk about how we got to the point where it was so important for Mizuno to kind of stamp this flag in Atlanta and in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think golf in general, you definitely saw it with Tiger Woods, the GOAT of the PGA Tour, and just everybody was tuned in. And then if you were there, you were following his group, and the amount of wins that he was able to rack up, I think, was 82, which I was actually at Eastlake when he won that one and rushed the 18th green. So a good memory for me. But thinking back through, my childhood leading up, my dad played golf. I always went with my dad. You knew Tiger Woods. I think as I've gotten older, gotten a little bit more competitive with golf, and that's really when it's gotten fun. And then I've been on board with Mizuno for 7 months now, so I'm still fairly new to the golf industry. Been in marketing all my career, but now it's the competitiveness, I think, has really been a major driver for me in wanting to get better, wanting to shoot lower scores, wanting to be able to compete within the confines of the industry. But the pandemic is, looking back at our sales numbers, again, haven't been with Mizuno Golf that long, but looking back, the pandemic is really what kind of soared our sales into a new category.
Yeah.
With recreational sports across the board, I was in power sports before Mizuno, and we saw the same thing.
Yeah, just the outdoor, just being outside. That's where the networking happened.
Dads that had never ridden a motorcycle before were going in and buying 3 of them so that him and his 2 sons or daughters or whomever could go ride. So I think, same with RVs and boats and, again, fishing gear. Like anything that was recreational really took off during the pandemic. So if there was a silver lining to that, I think that would be it from a sport industry side. But honestly now, Mizuno Golf, I think we're still sort of catching up a little bit to the growth that we saw during the pandemic, and that really the industry saw. The numbers are they've flattened since the pandemic, but they're staying steady, which to me means a lot of people that maybe got into golf during that time frame have stuck with it, and they found people to play with, whether it's more on the leisure side or it is being competitive. I just think people got a little bit of taste of how great the game is. And they've stuck with it, and they've really enjoyed it, wherever they play and whoever they play with.
I think it's a good point. I think there's been stages of golf, right? Stage 1 was I'll play in a tournament every once in a while, I'll have a bunch of drinks, and I'm there for the goof. And then the next stage was I start enjoying going to Top Golf, and because it's I'm not as much pressure on, I'm better there. And then stage 3 was finally I might actually be okay at this. Like, I'm not an embarrassment to the people around me. And then stage 4 was now I have a goal of breaking 100, right? And then you get better. And that's what I like about the game, right? Look, you can be a basketball player, win on athleticism alone, and you'll always play the same kind of basketball. You may have an off day, but if you can't shoot, you're driving. Like, there's always things you can do. In the game of golf, you're really just playing against yourself. And it's you versus yourself, which is a different beast altogether.
Well, a funny story, a short time after starting with Mizuno, I was by far the worst golfer on the course and have since made some progress. I think I'm still the worst golfer on the course within the Mizuno golf group. However, hitting the ball where I can keep it in play. But after a few months, I went home to my wife and I just said, I'm really tired of being terrible at golf. And she, very concerned, said, well, what can we do? And I said, well, I just got to play more golf. And she kind of hesitated for a minute because she really wasn't expecting that answer. Maybe she was expecting like simulator in the basement answer. But we kind of have a laugh about that now. But it's once you can start to hit the ball where you want to and shoot score on the golf course, it changes the game, and it takes it from this, hey, drinking with the buddies, playing for leisure, to like, all right, now I'm really going to, it kind of reminds me of the game of like billiards or pool, where you're setting up for that next shot. And when you kind of get to that skill level where you can do that, it becomes fun, especially when you pull it off. So
for sure. I think that let's end this segment. We got 3 more minutes or so. Let's give, before we get to the Foundry, because this is going to be an important part for avid golfers, like tips. Like, I'm going to give a tip. If you're just starting golf, like, the natural reaction as an athlete is to want to hit the ball far and learn to drive first, right? It is the worst thing you can do, right? Because what you should start with is a 60 and work your way backwards. Because if you can chip and play that short game, you're more confident in everything else because it doesn't matter where the ball lands when you hit it off the tee. So there's much less pressure on you. Nobody told me that. So I'm sitting there learning to drive. I got this big arcing swing because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And I'm hitting the ball 200 yards, but if it just went straight, it would probably go 260. So, but then I learned to chip and just took a lot of time there and I worked my way back, which has helped me immensely. So my tip would be, as an ex-athlete who just thinks you're trying to pulverize, that's not the game. Start close, learn that, and move your way back. Would you have a tip to somebody golf? It could be an equipment tip. It could be somebody who's in the industry now.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really helped me is, when you go to work on something, whether it's the range, putting green, chipping green, go work on something specific. Don't try to work on everything in one day. But when you're playing, I think focus on contact. Ball contact is the most important thing. And to your point, you don't have to swing very hard or try to crush it to hit it 300 yards. If you can make decent contact with the ball, typically you'll keep it in play. Another good contact swing, typically you're by the green, and you can really, lessen those out of bounds and those strokes and those penalties that you'll, so easy to rack up.
For sure. Chris,
so
what about you?
Contact.
And my tip would be, and something I love about golf is the analytics that have come into it over the last little bit. My biggest tip would be, don't try to make birdie, try not to make bogey. If you do a lot of the analytics and study what makes a good golfer good, it's not that they hit incredible shots, it's that they don't hit poor shots. And when you mess up, take your medicine, get out, play for a reasonable
don't try to
score.
do a draw over the trees on a dog. Don't do that. Okay.
Even if you pull that shot off, you're probably going to miss the putt anyway and make a putt and make the same number if you chip it out sideways. It's amazing. Like the stat I heard that to me blew me away is an 18 handicapper versus scratch golfer. Scratch golfer makes maybe 1 or 2 birdies more per round. 18 strokes difference, but they only make 1 or 2 more birdies.
Right.
They're just not messing
getting
up.
double bogeys.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's why chipping is so important, right?
Absolutely.
When you're chipping those skull shots, or you're that guy that's putting from 30 yards out because you've got absolutely no confidence in your club. So that's a great point. We're going to get back, and now we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the Foundry and why this was the moment for Mizuno and why Atlanta was so important. So you've been listening to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here with Brad and Chris of Mizuno Golf. All right, so let's get to the nitty gritty here. So obviously we've set this up. COVID forced a lot of this. Obviously, as a country, we've just been exploding in wealth. There's more networking. There's more private clubs than ever. In fact, if you see it, ironically, that what's disappearing is that kind of entry level, that barrier to entry for golfers. And like Topgolf became that for a little while. The problem with Topgolf is that once you really enjoy golf, Topgolf just bores you. Like you're just out there and you're like, okay, like this shtick was, but it wears thin. So money's exploding. So Mizuno wedges are renowned throughout the industry. I own them. People have talked about them. Talk about how this was the right time to really make a push to be an all-around golf company, to build that testing facility, and talk about why Atlanta is so important. And I'll let either of you take this one because we're going to go about this for a good amount of time here.
Cool. Go for it.
I'll jump in and just say that, Mizuno Golf we are a complete golf equipment brand. Most recently in January 2025, we had the biggest product launch in brand history. We brought to market a new set of, Players irons in S3, which is our signature series under the Mizuno Pro line. We brought to market the JPX 925 Forged. Revolutionary, craftsmanship and engineering, the way that we build that club with a hydraulic press versus a hammer press. We also brought Mizuno Pro our golf ball into the Mizuno Pro line, as well as our wedges. So you have Mizuno Pro S and X golf ball, and then you have Mizuno Pro T1 and T3 wedges, and then M-Craft X putter line, which is basically an interchangeable putter, very versatile, and allows you to kind of build the putter to your stroke. So the equipment and the evolution of the equipment, in just my short time with the brand, I think you see, that really taking off and reaching new heights and setting new bars. And I think the Foundry kind of ties and plays right into that. It's not new for a golf brand to have a research and performance center. It's new to Mizuno, and the way that we do it, I think, is very new to the industry, where we open it up to everybody.
Yeah.
Anybody can come. We've partnered with the Standard Club over in Johns Creek, Georgia, but anybody can go to MizunoFoundry.com, book a standard iron fitting or book a complete package for the weekend. We've really catered it to that customer to come and have this premium Mizuno custom fitting experience. Chris, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I'll say why the timing of this is so awesome is we talked a little bit before about the boom that happened after COVID.
Yep.
So many new players coming to the game, so many players with their first exposure to it, buying that set of Wilsons they bought so they could go out and just, be presentable on the golf course. If you look at the buying cycle of golf clubs, it's typically a new set of irons about every 4 or 5 years. 2020 to 2025 is perfect timing. We're at an influx point in golf where it's going to either be all those new players continue with the game or all those new players go do something else.
Yeah.
If we
there's got to be so many external factors here, right? Let's talk about economy. Like, there's so many variables at play here. I mean, let's talk like Heritage Golf Links. These are some of my favorite people. I love them. It was my home course because that's just where I lived. But you're talking $110 to play on a Saturday morning. I mean, that was $55 even 5 years ago, and they know it, and they're shocked that it's filled as often as it is. Like, what do you do? It's a supply demand thing. I'm all for free market capitalism, but like, what happens if we really hit? Now that what's going to happen is the wealthiest people will continue to play. The business will continue to happen, but it's got to be hard to kind of time that and figure out what's going to happen there. And I'm curious to see. I really am, because I think that as a net positive, that golf it's got all the makings of what people should do, right? Concentration, you versus yourself, competitiveness, but also be out in the woods 4 hours. Like, it's got all the things that I think are good for sports and for society that people should be doing more of. I just get worried that if we hit the wrong kind of economic turn, we've priced so many people out of it, and it scares me. Which actually brings me to my question I was going to ask. So talk about when you make a line of golf clubs. Are you going after the pros first? Are you making those, you talked about the forged wedges. Are you making those blades for the main PGA golfer first? Are you making them for the amateur first? Are you making them in the middle first? What is the strategy? Because it has to do something with marketing.
It definitely does have to do with marketing, but Nick, I'll throw that one to Chris. Chris is our director of product, so when it comes to
I love both sides of this, right? Yeah. Because you're sitting here from the R&D, this is how we do this, but you're coming look, I got to get this out to the public, so this is going to probably be a good give and take of which first. Let him go first, but let's and then talk about the development cycle, who we're targeting as we're developing, and then Brad, we'll go over to you and talk about, hey, this is how you build a marketing strategy around that, right? Because I imagine you're a product first company,
for sure,
right? So you can't market. You have to be a product first to be a product first company.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
Well, and I'll start with a little bit of history on Mizuno, where people know us as a players company. I think that's what put Mizuno on the map, was our forging process, our blades, our muscle backs. You go back to some of the top golfers in the world playing before pay for play was a thing out on the PGA Tour. We were the #1 iron on tour for basically all of the 90s until the early 2000s, when another OBM was like, you know what, we're going to buy these counts. So when that happened, things changed.
Ironically, could I tell you a quick story?
Yeah.
I had a PGA golfer on this show once, and I don't remember why Mizuno came up, but he actually told me that story. He said he was playing golf and he was pretty much paid to play or whatever. He wasn't paid, but the second that the sponsorships and all that stuff started, that he dropped his Mizuno clubs. I think he went to PXG. I don't remember the specifics, but actually it was corroborated. I'll actually pop the episode number in so if people want to listen back. So, and again, I don't want to get into the nuance of, because sports has been taken over by this. We can go into an NIL discussion. It's probably affected golf already, but I just want to say that has been corroborated by people on tour, that they actually acknowledged that was a thing.
Well, and it's funny, that was in the 90s, and then in the mid 2000s, you had Nike, who obviously had some of the best players in the world. They were making equipment, and then Nike stopped making equipment, yet they honored all their contracts. With that, Mizuno saw our second resurgence, because all of a sudden players were getting paid still, but they could play whatever they wanted. So with that, Mizuno really took off again.
I love that.
And honestly, that kind of lit the flame on a lot of what we were doing. And to go to your question about who are we designing for, for the longest time, because we were designing for just those better players, our market was really small. You're talking the top 5% of golfers.
Yeah.
When Mizuno
You're probably aspirational to more people.
Absolutely.
They're like, when I get good enough, I'm going to do this, which is a great place to be in that aspirational market. But that being said, this is why this timing now makes sense.
You need to have an entry to that. And with that, our hot metal line right now, our JPX 925 hot metal, has become one of the biggest iron franchises in golf.
Got it.
And that's a line that extends all the way up to the highest handicaps.
Got it.
So once you pair that, the technology, the look and the feel of a Mizuno aimed at a higher handicap, plus it's got all the fitting capabilities built into it. That's kind of the perfect recipe for a brand to kind of catch fire.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It's almost like a dual approach, right? Because you got to keep one in mind, but the scalability downward also has to be kept in mind, right? So you're going to make it for these pros, but does it scale to the masses? Is it so off-putting that no one's going to ever touch it?
Right.
Like I remember one of my first things was in golf was when I got those really high handicap irons, and like no matter how you struck this thing, you were hitting the ball, right? And then I don't remember where I was, but I hit a blade. I'm like, like you're not even freaking close with the blade because the way they make contact with the club is, but then you learn how to swing differently and all that stuff. That makes a ton of sense. So you're kind of approaching this two-prong, and if you catch fire with one, then it's probably make a move to the other one. Now talk about from a marketing point of view, as you're talking about marketing these products, obviously the demand at the highest level, but that is that niche, really small market. So how do you think about mass market when we're designing these products?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're talking, JPX, we're talking about that forgiveness. We're talking about that, that game improvement iron that can really, take you from 100 to, sub 90, right?
Yep.
Like, and then we obviously have, marketing material and content built around that Mizuno Pro line, which is, our top line. But for us, really, it all starts with our forging process. The history and the legacy of Mizuno irons is built out of Chuo Koyo, a factory in Hiroshima, Japan, where we have forged all of our clubs in the same facility. They forged 3 things, one of which are Mizuno golf clubs, and it's a handshake deal. There's no paperwork agreement. It's Mizuno Corporation, out of Osaka, Japan, and Chuo Koyo factory in Hiroshima, Japan. And it's been a partnership for well over 60 years now. And I was fortunate enough to go to the factory and see the forging process. And when you learn about the way that Mizuno does it versus competitive brands in the marketplace, it's second to none. And you understand why our tagline is nothing feels like a Mizuno, because when you catch a ball in the sweet spot of a Mizuno iron, number one, it sends it. Number two, like you feel like you didn't even hit the golf ball, like it's that smooth and that sweet. So we are in the process from a marketing standpoint to continue to tell that story. That's our heritage, that's our legacy, and that's what makes Mizuno Golf. We are now, to Chris's point, with the advancements of product and other categories. I mentioned Craft X and the putter line. We've got some metal woods in the pipeline that I think are really going to revolutionize the golf game. But wedges, balls, all the way down to soft goods, bags, putters. We don't put anything out there that we feel like is just mailing it in from a product standpoint. Like there's R&D put into everything. And we're putting the best product out there. So from a marketing standpoint, that's the story we're trying to tell. And I really enjoy it because it doesn't feel like a marketing spin or a PR spin. It feels like I'm telling the truth. I just need you to go put a Mizuno club in your hand, swing it a few times, and then let me know. If you hate it, you hate it.
For sure.
Odds are you're going to love it.
And I think, so I have not been to the Mizuno factory, but I have been to the Bridgestone Golf Factory, another Japanese company. And I think it's called Kaizen, but there is this thing in Japan where how meticulous they are. Like there's like 1 out of every 1,000 balls is tested. There's someone from Japan that comes in that nobody knows, that just walks through the aisles like it's freaking World War II, like just checking on everybody. There's like a steam whistle. I mean, it's crazy. But the point is, and this is why Toyota's been so successful and why Toyotas are still on the road for 250,000 miles. Meanwhile, Ford's bumpers fall off 300 miles in, is because the Japanese have been so meticulous in these processes. So while I have not seen it in action with Mizuno, I have seen a similarly done factory, and that is it. You're not trying to make things fancy. You're trying to make things deliberate and good and repeatable, because those systems are what actually work and those factories are what do it. So I see where you're coming from. That being said, that's not how the world works. The people want fancy stories and they want fluff and they want the shtick. And I hate it as a marketer, as someone who's gone through it now. I'm like, look, this is a real diamond. This is a 3-carat diamond. You can never find one that looks like this ever in your entire life. That is why it is worth what it is worth. But that's not what they want. They want how much went into the designer and what was her motivation behind it and blah, blah, blah. And I get it. And I'm not saying, but as a marketer now, that doesn't put you in an easy position, because they could be the best product in the world, but you still got to kind of cut through the clutter of everything else out there.
Well, and I think to add to that, in today's world, you've got to deliver that message in under 10 seconds or less. That's
3. I already lost my attention span.
That's the attention that people are going to give you. So, for us, I think, we really bleed on, the competition of golf, the competition within the sport. A lot of our marketing content, it's that guy on the range at 6 a.m. in Blue Hour, just grinding and hitting golf balls and really wanting to get better. For some of our more, muscle back and players' equipment, And then we take a more lighthearted approach. And, honestly, we try to be that golf brand that, you want to go play with. Like, we're in your foursome, and we're having fun and we're chopping it up. And if you shoot 100, that's okay. Maybe, next week you'll shoot 95. So we're a little bit of both. And I think, that's the fun part of the brand is you get to kind of lift the veil a little bit and just allow people to come in and be part of the Mizuno family. If you hit Mizuno golf clubs, you are part of our family, and you see that from golf course to golf course, across the country. And I think you certainly see that at the Foundry too, the way that we've, again, built that with the consumer in mind. We've opened it up to any consumer. You don't have to be a member of the Standard Club to book a fitting and come out. You don't have to
The Standard Club put a lot of work in it altogether. I mean, the course was gorgeous. I played a couple of months ago, and just beginning to end, you walk in, and people that I'd played with that haven't been there in a long time walk there like, oh my God, this looks like a completely new place. And then you're right at the edge of the range. It's perfect.
Yeah. No, the location of it's great. The partnership is great. And we're just getting started with it. So, and one thing we didn't mention too at the Foundry, we have a custom robot arm that actually hits golf balls and baseballs. So on the R&D side, the golf product that'll come from Mizuno for decades to come, a lot of that's going to be ideated and tested right there in the Foundry, which is a cool piece to have that here right in your backyard and again in Johns Creek, Georgia. So, and then our baseball team will do the same thing.
Yeah.
For baseball.
And they're similar sports, right? Launch angle, all these things, this inertia, all these different
parts. Well, the robot's cool because we say custom, and it literally is. Like, you can customize that robot swing to, anything, a wide variety of sports. I think there's even a hand that may smack a volleyball or something, and some other stuff that's in the works that will come to market later.
And it's not a stick. Like, this is one thing people don't understand. And I saw Bridgestone has something similar, and they were showing us the difference. I think it was Tiger and Bryson, but they were showing them robots. One was programmed by each, and like Tiger's was like straight and everything, and then Bryson was like, we're gonna go over this roof on a right angle going downward, and the balls were like shooting all over the place. But there's a reason, because the nubs on the ball and the angles and where you hit it and which one, like these are all parts of the game that are meticulous the higher up in the level you go. So again, I just want to make sure it's not a robot because like robots are cool and this is a Japanese company. It's a robot because you're doing R&D for decades down the road.
Yeah, I mean, the robot is nothing new to the industry or new to a golf brand by any means. To have it at the Foundry, someone to book a fitting at the Foundry and be able to go and see our team testing equipment, like that's part of the upgraded premium experience that we offer at the Foundry, and I think that part is really cool. And most brands aren't offering anyone behind the scenes look at.
It's very bougie.
It's a little bit of an exclusive, peek behind, what's to come for, Mizuno Golf, and they might be testing, sound that day, or they might be testing golf ball that day, or who knows, but or you might see our baseball team out there testing baseball bats or softball bats.
That's cool.
Just to have a bay dedicated to R&D, I think, and then to give consumers a view into that, I think just speaks to, the fun behind Mizuno Golf. We recently launched behind the scenes of the PGA show. We've got some more behind the scenes content coming to our YouTube channel, and it's exactly to do that, is to showcase that we're a lean team. Everybody is hands on deck at a lot of time, but we like to have just as much as fun as we work hard. So
yeah, I love it.
I love for people to know that piece of our golf brand.
Yeah, and then you put it on display, right? It's like when you go to a good restaurant, they have the open kitchen. You feel more like you're a part of what's going on, and then they shut off, close behind. So, Chris, talk a little bit about the fitting, because this is something, and I haven't been there yet. And like the only thing I did do is I took a couple of swings. And someone's like, "This is the kind of driver to get," and like you swing like a freaking idiot, get a stiff shaft, and, they just that kind of stuff. They're like, your ball's gonna always hook to the right, so get it offset a little bit, like that kind of stuff. And I mean, it immensely helped my game. So talk about how important fittings are from a technical player standpoint, and then Brad, maybe you could touch on how important the fittings are for consumer data and customer acquisition, and because I have to imagine it's like most things, once you fit them and get them confident in their swing, they're pretty hooked for life. So talk a little bit just from the player standpoint, how important those fittings are, and about what level of golf you should or have to be at to something that you should take seriously.
I love that question because it builds on the misconception that you have to be a good golfer to get fit.
Yeah,
I think that's the number one thing we hear from Mizuno is I'm not good enough for Mizuno, and then also I'm not not good enough to be a custom fit Mizuno.
Yeah.
That's like taking it a step further. The crazy thing about a fitting is if you're the worst golfer you've ever played, you have tendencies. They may be bad tendencies, but you have those tendencies. If you can get a custom fit set of clubs for you, you are going to understand why the ball went a direction is because of something you did versus something the club did. If you're a beginner and you're hitting big slices, you don't know if that's because the shaft is too stiff. I came over the top, I released, I cast it, I did this. Could be the upright, could be the lie angle.
Your wrists were unlocked, you were 210s, a million things.
Exactly. So to me, it takes one of the massive variables out. If you know you're working with your equipment as opposed to against your equipment, it's huge.
And it's got to be a confidence builder too, right?
Absolutely.
It's just the psychology of it, because it's almost like you removed an excuse.
Right.
Once that excuse is removed, they're like, okay, well, that's gone. I got to hit this ball straight. Like, yeah, I see what you're saying. For sure.
The second misconception of it is that a fit club costs so much more. You know, with Mizuno, one of the big things we hang our hat on is that when you get fit for a shaft, a grip, a length, a lie angle, a loft, whatever that is, almost everything we offer is no upcharge. So we can, the cost you would buy a set right off the rack at the PGA Tour
Let's take a half a step back, talk about why those things are important, right?
Yeah.
Let's just assume, because we have plenty of golfers, loft, because you see these different angle lies. There's so much that goes into clubs nowadays.
Exactly.
Just briefly touch on a little bit of them, the lob, why these things are important, why people have a sandwich that's a 56 or a 58. Talk about just these, because I think it's important to cover.
I mean, getting the loft gapping is huge, because you want to make sure you only are allowed 14 clubs. You want to make sure each of those 14 clubs does something unique. So you're making sure you're filling out your bag
It's not
properly.
always just distance. It's hitting out of the
exactly
sand, hitting out of high grass, like usually I'm in, hitting out of the neighbor's yard, if the rock garden, if it's me when I'm playing, like one of those things. But again, so each club is different, but there's lie angles. There's so much.
The lie angle is basically the angle between the shaft and the ground. And if you don't have the right lie angle dialed in based off of your height, your arm length, your swing plane, all of those, then the ball is not going to start on line. It just isn't. So, that's one thing that's a free tweak that we make for you.
Yeah.
Getting the right shaft is critical, because each player loads and unloads the shaft differently. They need to have different weight requirements. They have different bending profile requirements. For us to say that just because we decided this dynamic gold is the stock shaft in this one, everything else is an upcharge, you know what? Maybe 1 in 50 players fit that dynamic gold.
Yeah.
We want to put a shaft in that for you to allow you to deliver the head to the ball more consistently.
One of the first things I realized about hitting the ball straight for me was when I followed all the way through and felt that shaft snap back when I hit it all the way in the back was when I hit the ball straight. Whether it was the follow through was off or something like that, but that stiff shaft gave me that tactile feel to be able to feel that a lot more. And I could completely have made that up in my head, but that placebo effect has worked so well that like sticking with it. Like, you know what I mean?
It's all about timing. I mean, the shaft is big. They joke it's the engine of the club. It's the whip that connects the grip to the head. If you are timing that whip properly, you're recognizing the extra force and the extra power that comes from that. If you're not, and that shaft isn't loading enough, or it's unloading too quickly, that ball's going to go anywhere, and you're not going to have maximum power to the ball. So it's all about getting the one that fits you properly.
If you had to pick one club, okay, this is complete hypothetical, to get fit on when you play golf, which club should you get fit for you custom? Let's say you're on a budget, right? You got a set of clubs and you have $300, $400, and you want to go out up to $600 for a driver. But what club would be the best to have it completely fit to you?
I mean, I'm gonna say, just from a golfer's point of view, if your putter doesn't fit you, then putters are more than half your strokes. Honestly, if your putter isn't working for you, then you are not going to score well. So to me, putter is the number one. Like, and it's so funny because most people buy a putter by walking in, and if I happen to make 3 putts on this one, I'm going to walk out with it. Yeah, that is absolutely. But
understand, like, from someone who, even if thinking about it as an engineer, that's the least moving parts of anything. You're hitting it the lightest, it's the squarest. There's no angles, so your brain wanders. Why the hell would I need to get fitted for a putter?
Well, the funny thing is, in another club, you can make compensations to overcome something that's not working. For example, if the club is too upright, then you know what, you could swing a little bit more, inside
Hit your
out.
left foot, your front foot back a little bit on an angle to offset. With
the putter, because everything is every movement is so small, every movement is so compact and concise. A pendulum is a pendulum, and if your pendulum isn't starting it online, That's
All
profit.
right, welcome back to the Marketing Madmen on Extra 106.3. Nick Constantino here, finishing up our conversation with Brad and Chris of Mizuno. So, Brad, first off, so we don't have to do this at the end, talk about how people find you. Talk about how to find the Foundry. Talk about how to find your YouTube. Give them all the information so they can come get closer to you guys.
Yeah, on meta platforms, you can find us at Mizuno Golf North America. On YouTube, Mizuno Golf. Our website is MizunoGolf.com. And most recently, we launched MizunoFoundry.com for everything Foundry related and book and fittings at the Foundry.
Perfect. You set me up perfectly. So talk about the Foundry. So talk about I make a reservation. I come in. I don't know what to expect. I just know that I am at the time in my life where I really want to get serious about golf. And I was told I got to play Mizuno's. Talk about what that experience is like for me when I walk in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an upgraded premium fitting experience, and then I think in true Mizuno fashion, we've added value to that. Where number one, it's open to anyone. It's available by appointment only, but anyone can go to MizunoFoundry.com and make an appointment, whether you want an iron fitting, a full bag fitting, or we're going to offer some specialized packages that you and your golf buddies can make a weekend out of it. So. Upon arrival, you come through the Standard Club Pro Shop, and we talked about that earlier. They've done some massive renovation and modernized not only their facilities but the golf course out there. And then you're picked up in a Mizuno golf cart, and you're brought to the Foundry, where once you step in, to your right we have a putting green with Sand Putt Lab and Putt View, and that's Chris was talking about dialing in your putter earlier. That's exactly where we would fit you for your putter. There's sort of a retail wall or a merch area that has Foundry exclusive apparel, bourbon glasses, anything and everything golf related. And then you make your way into the Swing DNA lab, and Swing DNA is special to us because when you come get fit with Mizuno, and this is anywhere, you're going to grab a club that has a piece of hardware clamped on it, typically a 7-iron. The hardware is referred to as the shaft optimizer, but it is measuring, I think, over 15 data points. We relay like the most important 8 to you.
Yeah.
But you take 3 swings with that shaft optimizer, and that's how we know where to start your fitting.
Got it.
So instead of beating 30 to 40 balls to go, okay, here's where we need to start making adjustments.
You're starting with a baseline.
You take 3 swings. We know which shaft that you're best fit for. Really,
and you're probably measuring the things that don't change psychologically when you go.
Well, it's
based
what
on
Chris
club,
touched on with loft angle and lie angle. Are you compressing the ball?
Yeah, like you're not changing height every time you swing.
Speed.
Right.
No, it's measuring all those data points, and then that's where we're starting your fitting. So we are 75% of the way there, and you've only taken 3 swings. And that makes the experience better at the Foundry and really anywhere that you get a Mizuno golf fitting, because now you're not worn out. You're ready to hit, you're loose, you're ready to hit more golf balls, and you're ready to try maybe 2 or 3 different shafts or 2 or 3 different club heads. And our professional fitters are going to put you in, whatever's getting you, the most distance, the most accuracy, whatever you're looking for. So when it comes to a custom fitting experience, you get that with any Mizuno fitting, but at the Foundry, again, it's upgraded because of the facility you're at. And then afterward, sit back in the lounge, have a cocktail. We've got a candy bar in there. If you got a sweet tooth, we have a full build shop in the back. So potentially you could get fit, go have lunch at the Standard Club, come back an hour and a half, 2 hours later, and pick up your set.
That's really cool.
So there's a full build shop right there on site.
And then they got the range right there. You can go hit some
The range is right there.
Yeah, cool.
And then we talked about the Nest, which is the bay that's dedicated to R&D with a custom robot arm, which we allow you to step in there and kind of view what our R&D team is doing. And again, it may be golf, it may be baseball, it may be another division that's out there working with the robot arm. But you get a look inside Mizuno USA, when you visit the Foundry, and I think that's what's really cool. And then from a golf standpoint, you get the specialized fitting that we talked about, and then to your point, pop out, play the Standard Club,
love it.
Visit and hang in some of their amenities, and really just have an awesome day at the golf course.
Love it. So we didn't touch on this. So why Atlanta?
Why the Foundry's in Atlanta?
The focus in Atlanta. I mean, I know why, but
we're headquartered in Atlanta. Mizuno USA is headquartered in Atlanta. We're certainly one of the few, maybe the only East Coast golf brand. A lot of our competitors are way out west.
Buy local, yo. Buy from people here. They make impact in this economy. It's super important. I'm not kidding.
We wanted to provide this experience. Atlanta's got one of the biggest airports, so it's easy for anybody in the country.
And
to
this is a
travel
golf town, man. I don't care what anybody says. I know 3-year-olds that are out there playing more golf than I am. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. mean, it's easy to land at the Atlanta airport and be at the Foundry within an hour and a half, barring you don't hit Atlanta traffic. Now, that's something that we won't touch on, but
it's I was going to say, without traffic, you'd be there in an hour.
It's definitely it's a thing, but we wanted it in our backyard, man. We are 20 minutes from our corporate office, so it's easy for the golf group to pack up and go over there for the afternoon and test or do whatever we need to do. It's easy for the baseball and team sports crew to do the same thing. It's easy for everybody just to shoot over there. We actually had an employee day shortly after the grand opening, where every employee, the accounting folks were in there taking swings and learning their swing DNA and stuff like that too.
I'm almost terrified to see mine. I'm not going to lie.
It's in our backyard, and it allows us again to focus on that consumer experience, but it allows us to take advantage of the facility from a Mizuno internal
Does a person
standpoint.
tell me how bad my swing is, or is it a robot? I just need to know, because if I don't want to have a robot be like, look, you suck. There's no other way to say this.
Well, wherever the ball goes is going to tell you how good or bad your swing is.
Fair enough.
Our fitters are never going to tell you it's a bad swing, but they will work to improve it.
Okay, well, I know.
One other thing I love about us just being local in Atlanta also, if you're driving up 85, when you get to the Chateau Elan exit, look over to the right, and you can see the big Mizuno Runbird over to the right. All of our clubs are built in the U.S.
Love it.
That's one thing that we love is being local. We're not, buying clubs assembled elsewhere.
So we're not going to get into the tariff conversation.
That's another conversation.
That's another conversation that will derail this whole thing, and it could change within 6 minutes. But speaking of,
I will say our prices have stayed the same.
There it is. We had to get it in there. There's the marketing pitch. So talk real fast, Chris. Talk about the future of Mizuno. We got about 3-4 minutes left. Talk about the future. Talk about, this seems like a big point of culmination for you guys, where all the R&D, everything you've put toward now manifests itself moving forward. So talk about it. Talk about what we have in store.
Yeah, it really is a big point for us, where I think this is where you're going to start to see Mizuno become, I wouldn't say unrecognizable from where we are, but a little bit different than what we have been, building upon the foundation that we've established with our forging process and our irons.
Yeah.
Brad mentioned a few minutes ago about the biggest launch we've ever had this past January that really is speaking a lot into other categories, balls, putters, wedges, going into those. With Mizuno, I think we are at a point where the golfer now trusts us.
Yeah.
And I think we've established that trust through being very consistent. You mentioned that word Kaizen before.
Yeah, Kaizen.
Kaizen means consistent improvement. And that's something that we've always been doing. We're building upon
I bet you guys didn't think that I was going to pull that one out.
It was great.
I bet you guys think I was going to pull Kaizen out.
So you're going to see that continue. And that's why we've built that trust in irons. Yeah. And with that same philosophy goes into everything we do.
Yeah.
So now you're starting to see it in more categories. I can't wait for everyone to see some of the wood stuff we've got coming on. There's some really cool, interesting stories. Again, that's a little bit of a sneak preview, sort of something you'll see in the future, but something unrecognizable in a category where people traditionally don't think of Mizuno.
Yeah.
We've got some really cool, interesting stuff coming.
And I've learned, so I played so long without a 3-wood because it just wasn't happening for me, right? And then all of a sudden you start hitting your 3-wood and you realize how important of a club it is to have in a bag. So I think all important things. What I really like is that from the short time that I've known you guys is that you're nimble. So a lot of the bureaucracy with a lot of these other companies that become these mega behemoths, right? Like they're almost putting lines out because they feel they have to every year. The thought process is not going into it because like you can't just rename a club number 2 and think it's a brand new club. Like it doesn't have the thought process. So I think the fact that you are steeped in that tradition, but I also think it's really important what we talked about, Brad, about connecting with the consumer and being fun and not being stuffy, because even the name, the Foundry, is kind of freaking scary, right? Like, what are you making, swords? Like, what are we doing here? So I think the line to walk is a really cool one, but I think you guys have done a good job, and your lack of layers probably helps that because you have such a direct relationship with your consumers. So I'm excited to see it in person. We'll get up there. We'll come check it out. I will be bringing a scratch golfer with me that makes me look really stupid when I play. Actually, that's a lie. His 5-year-old makes me look stupid when I play because he's played 200 rounds already. He's 5. So more rounds than I have by triple. But I appreciate you guys coming out. Check out Mizuno. Buy local here in Georgia. I can't tell you how important that is, especially moving forward in this world. You've been listening to The Marketing Madman on Extra 106.3, and we will catch you next week.